The slap landed before the music finished its chorus. A sharp crack split the living room, loud enough to silence 50 conversations at once. Sophie Cole staggered, her heel skidding on the polished floor as her hand flew instinctively to her swollen belly. "Don't you dare use that baby on me," Jasper Cole snapped, his face twisted with rage. "Sign the papers." "I'm done." The room froze. Someone dropped a glass. Somewhere near the gift table a woman gasped, "Oh my God!" Sophie stood there, 8 months pregnant, her breath uneven but her spine straight. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She looked at her husband the way people look at strangers who've just revealed something ugly. "I thought this was a baby shower," she said softly. Jasper scoffed. "It is. For me. My freedom." He shoved a white envelope into her chest so hard it bent. Divorce papers. Already signed on his side. Across the room, Juliet Reed, tight red dress, smug smile, raised her phone higher, recording. "I told you she'd play victim," she said loudly. "Pregnancy is her last card." Sophie turned slowly. "You're filming this." Juliet laughed. "Why not? People love drama." Jasper didn't stop her. He enjoyed it. Margaret Cole, Jasper's mother, pushed through the crowd, pearls clinking as she took in the scene with cold approval. "This nonsense has gone on long enough," she said. Her eyes flicked to Sophie's belly with thinly veiled disgust. "You embarrassed my son by getting pregnant when he was already moving on." The words hit harder than the slap. "I was his wife," Sophie replied, her voice steady though her hands trembled. "I still am." Margaret smiled cruelly. "Not for long." Jasper stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to sound dangerous. "Sign it. Or I swear, I'll make this uglier than it already is." Sophie looked around. Faces she thought were friends avoided her eyes. Some stared openly, hungry for spectacle. Others whispered. No one stepped forward. Not one. Her heart thudded painfully. Not from fear, but from the sudden crushing realization that she had been alone here long before this moment. She bent slowly, picked up the pen from the table, then paused. "Is this really how you want to do this?" she asked. "In front of everyone." Jasper leaned in, his breath hot with anger. "You should be grateful I'm doing it now and not after the baby's born. Don't try to trap me with motherhood." Something inside Sophie went still. "Resign." The room exhaled. Juliet clapped once, sarcastic. "Good girl." Sophie handed the papers back. Her fingers brushed Jasper's, and he flinched like even her touch offended him. "Get her out of my house," Margaret said sharply. "I won't have her ruining the rest of the evening." Sophie blinked. "Your house." Jasper shrugged. "It's my mother's. You're not family anymore." A dull ache spread through Sophie's chest, but she nodded. "Okay." She turned toward the hallway. Jasper's voice followed her. "And don't take anything that isn't yours." She stopped, glanced back once, eyes meeting his. "I never did," she said. The door closed behind her with a final hollow thud. Outside, rain poured like the sky had cracked open. Sophie stood on the porch for a moment, her dress soaked, mascara streaking down her cheeks unnoticed. Her phone buzzed relentlessly in her purse. Messages she didn't open, names she didn't care to read. She walked down the steps slowly, one hand steadying her belly. A woman she barely knew rushed out after her. "Sophie." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "This was wrong." Sophie managed a small smile. "Thank you." The woman hesitated. "Do you need a ride?" Before Sophie could answer, Jasper's voice cut through the rain. "Don't get involved. This isn't your problem." The woman stepped back immediately. Sophie nodded again. Always nodding. Always understanding. She walked to the sidewalk, sat on a cold stone bench, and finally allowed herself to breathe. Her hands shook now. Not from heartbreak. From restraint. She pulled out her phone and scrolled past dozens of unread messages. Friends. Family. Jasper's cousins. None from the one person she knew would answer immediately. Her thumb hovered over the name. Daniel Hawthorne. She stared at it for a long moment, then locked her phone and slipped it back into her bag. Not yet, she whispered to herself. The rain soaked her hair, plastered it to her face. Her baby shifted, a gentle reminder of what mattered. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, if you've ever been humiliated and told to stay quiet, you know this feeling. Subscribe and watch as the story unfolds. She stood slowly, pain flashing through her lower back, and flagged down a passing cab. The driver glanced at her through the mirror. Rough night, she swallowed. You could say that. As the car pulled away, the house disappeared behind them. Lights glowing, music rising again, laughter resuming like nothing had happened. Inside that house, Jasper poured himself a drink, Juliet on his arm, Margaret already discussing legal strategies. None of them noticed the faint cracks spreading beneath their feet. None of them knew that the woman they'd just thrown into the rain was not just a discarded wife. She was a daughter who had chosen love over power. And power, when awakened, never forgot. The cab turned the corner, and Sophie rested her head against the window, eyes closing. Somewhere deep inside, something ancient stirred. And far away, a man who ruled empires would soon receive a call he had waited years for. If you've ever been told to know your place, if you've ever stayed silent because you were afraid of losing love, stay with this story. Because silence doesn't mean weakness. It means the storm hasn't spoken yet. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and quiet disappointment. Sophie sat on the narrow bed, her coat still damp from the rain, her swollen feet dangling just above the floor. A nurse adjusted the monitor strapped around her belly, the steady rhythm of her baby's heartbeat filling the silence. Stress isn't good for you right now, the nurse said gently. Do you have someone we can call? Sophie shook her head. I'm fine. The nurse hesitated, clearly unconvinced, then forced a smile. I'll be right outside. The door clicked shut. Sophie exhaled slowly, pressing her palms against her eyes. The events of the evening replayed in brutal clarity. The slap, the laughter, the way no one had stopped it. Not one person had said her name. Her phone buzzed. Message from Jasper. You left some things behind. I'll have my lawyer decide what you're allowed to collect. She stared at the screen, then turned it face down. Another vibration. Juliet this time. Hope the bus stop was comfortable. You always liked playing the victim. Sophie's jaw tightened. Her baby kicked hard, as if sensing her anger. It's okay, she whispered, rubbing her belly. I won't let them hurt us anymore. Across town, Jasper sat in his mother's living room, feet kicked up, drink in hand. Juliet curled against him, scrolling through comments on the video she'd already uploaded. Look at this, she laughed. 2,000 views in an hour. People are calling her pathetic. Jasper smirked. Good. Maybe now she'll stop pretending she belongs in my world. Margaret glanced up from her phone. You should have done this months ago. A woman like that was always going to drag you down. Jasper nodded. She never fit. Too quiet. Too ordinary. They toasted to that. What Jasper didn't know was that 3 of his biggest clients had already seen the video. What he didn't know was that quiet women were often the ones with the deepest roots. Back at the hospital, Sophie's doctor entered, her expression serious. Your blood pressure's high. We're keeping you overnight. Sophie's chest tightened. Is my baby okay? For now, the doctor said carefully. But you need to rest. After she left, Sophie finally picked up her phone again. Her hands hovered over the screen, trembling. She scrolled to the name she'd avoided all night. Daniel Hawthorne, her father. She hadn't spoken to him in years. The door creaked open softly. A man in a dark suit stepped inside. His presence calm but commanding. His eyes found Sophie instantly, sharp and familiar. I told them not to tell you I was coming, he said quietly. But they couldn't stop me. Sophie's breath caught. Dad! Daniel Hawthorne crossed the room in 3 long strides and stopped in front of her. He took her hands gently, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. I saw the video, he said. His voice didn't rise, but something dangerous lived beneath the calm. I was on a plane before it finished loading. Sophie looked away, shame flooding her. I didn't want you to see me like that. He crouched in front of her, eyes level with hers. There is nothing shameful about surviving cruelty. Her lips trembled. I wanted him to love me without knowing who I was. Daniel nodded slowly. And he failed. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken history. Say the word, Daniel continued. I'll end him. His company. His name. Everything. Sophie shook her head. Not yet. Daniel's jaw tightened. He struck you. He endangered my grandchild. I know, she whispered. But I want you to watch what happens when people believe I'm powerless. Daniel studied her for a long moment, then gave a faint, proud smile. You're stronger than you know. Outside the room, Jasper laughed into his phone, unaware. Inside, Daniel Hawthorne sent a single message to his executive assistant. Begin the audit. Sophie leaned back against the pillow, exhaustion washing over her as her baby's heartbeat filled the room again, steady and strong. Across the city, systems began to move. Numbers shifted. Contracts trembled. And Jasper Cole, drunk on victory, had no idea that the first crack had already formed beneath his empire. If you've ever watched someone smile while breaking you, if you've ever been told your silence made you weak, stay with this story. Because what comes next doesn't arrive with noise. It arrives with consequences. Jasper woke up with a headache and the comfortable belief that the worst was over. Sunlight spilled through the windows of his downtown office as he loosened his tie and dropped into his chair. The baby shower video had crossed 50,000 views overnight. The comments were brutal, but not toward him. Toward Sophie. She knew what she was doing. Pregnancy isn't a shield. Men deserve happiness too. Jasper smiled as he skimmed them. Public opinion was on his side. That was all that mattered. His assistant knocked lightly. Morning, Jasper. We've got a situation. Jasper didn't look up. If this is about Sophie, forward everything to legal. It's not, she said. It's Whitestone Bank. That got his attention. Jasper frowned. What about them? They're requesting an immediate meeting. Today. They said it's urgent. Jasper leaned back. They can wait. I've got a bid review at noon. She swallowed. They said if we don't come in, they'll suspend our credit line. Jasper laughed. They can't do that. Half our equipment loans run through them. I know, she said quietly. But they said it's non-negotiable. Jasper's smile faded. An hour later, he sat across from 3 stone-faced executives in a glass conference room that suddenly felt too cold. This is highly irregular, Jasper said, forcing calm. We've never missed a payment. The woman at the head of the table folded her hands. This isn't about payments. Then what is it about? She slid a folder across the table. Jasper opened it. Internal audits. Supplier dependencies. Risk exposure analyses he'd never seen before. How did you get this? He snapped. She met his eyes. We were instructed to review all partners with high reputational risk. Jasper scoffed. Reputational risk. Based on what? A messy divorce. No one answered. The man beside her spoke instead. We're recalling 30% of your outstanding loans. Effective immediately. Jasper stood. You can't be serious. I am, the woman said. You have 7 days. Jasper stormed out furious, but not afraid. He still had other banks, other investors, or so he thought. By noon 2 more calls came in. By 3 another. Each conversation followed the same script. Polite. Final. By evening Jasper's confidence had cracked. What the hell is happening? He demanded, pacing his office as Margaret listened on speaker. They're squeezing you, she snapped. Fight back. Threaten legal action. I tried. Jasper shouted. They're not afraid. Across the city, Sophie sat in a quiet hospital room, scrolling through photos she'd never shown anyone. Her wedding day. Jasper smiling like a man who believed the world owed him everything. Daniel sat beside her, his phone vibrating non-stop. He didn't answer it. "They're moving faster than I expected," he said calmly. Sophie didn't look up. "I don't want him hurt." Daniel's gaze softened. "Consequences aren't harm. They're correction." That night, Jasper drank alone in his penthouse, staring at his phone. No message from Sophie. No plea. No fear. That bothered him more than the banks. Juliet called. "Why aren't you answering me?" "I'm busy." "With what?" she snapped. "People are saying your company's in trouble." Jasper's grip tightened. "People say a lot of things." She hesitated. "Jasper, if this gets ugly." The line went dead. Jasper threw his phone across the room. The next morning, his head of operations burst into his office, pale. "The Denver project just got suspended." Jasper froze. "Why?" "The city pulled permits. Said they're reassessing compliance." "That's impossible." "It's happening." By afternoon, the board demanded answers Jasper didn't have. By evening, his name trended again, but this time not for the slap. Mitchell Construction faces financial review. Jasper watched the news in silence, his jaw clenched. Somewhere deep inside, unease turned into fear. Back at the hospital, Sophie watched her daughter's ultrasound flicker across the screen, her heart swelling at the tiny movements. "You're safe," she whispered. "No matter what." Daniel stepped aside to take a call. "Yes," he said quietly. "Proceed." Sophie closed her eyes. If you've ever watched someone laugh while your life fell apart, if you've ever been told to be quiet while injustice stood in front of you, subscribe and stay with this story, because the moment they stop laughing is coming. Across town, Jasper's phone rang. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "This is Jasper Cole." A calm voice replied. "Mr. Cole, this is Hawthorne Group Compliance. We're conducting a full review of your financial ecosystem." Jasper's blood ran cold. "Hawthorne," he whispered. The line went silent. And for the first time since the slap, Jasper understood something had gone terribly, irreversibly wrong. Jasper didn't sleep. He sat on the edge of his bed staring at the city lights, replaying the word in his head over and over like a bad echo. Hawthorne. By morning, he had convinced himself it was a coincidence. Hawthorne was a common name. Big corporations audited smaller ones all the time. This was stress talking. Fear exaggerating shadows. He put on his suit, straightened his tie, and walked into the office determined to regain control. The illusion shattered before noon. His CFO stood in the doorway, eyes red, voice tight. "Jasper." The board called an emergency meeting. Jasper didn't slow. "Good. I want answers too." The conference room was full when he arrived. Faces that usually greeted him with respect now looked away. Legal counsel sat stiffly at the far end. So did two unfamiliar men in dark suits. Jasper took his seat at the head of the table. "Let's get this over with." One of the strangers stood. "Jasper Cole, I'm representing Hawthorne Capital Risk Division." Jasper's jaw clenched. "We don't have business with Hawthorne Capital." "You do," the man replied calmly. "Indirectly. Extensively." He clicked a remote. The screen lit up. Lines. Every major lender. Every supplier. Every insurer Jasper depended on. All connected to Hawthorne. Jasper's mouth went dry. "This isn't legal," Jasper snapped. "You're coordinating a chokehold." The man met his gaze. "We're exercising our right to withdraw from high-risk partnerships." "What risk?" Jasper demanded. The screen changed. Video footage filled the room. The baby shower. The slap. Gasps rippled through the boardroom. Jasper shot to his feet. "That's my private life." "Violence is never private," the man said. "Especially when it trends." Margaret's voice cracked through the speakerphone. "Turn that off." No one listened. Another clip played. Jasper's voice, cold and cruel. "Don't you dare use that baby to trap me." Silence fell like a verdict. The Hawthorne representative folded his hands. Effective immediately, all Hawthorne-affiliated institutions are terminating their relationships with Mitchell Construction. Jasper's vision blurred. "You can't. We already have." The room erupted. Board members shouted. Phones rang. Papers scattered. Jasper backed into his chair, heart pounding. "This is about Sophie," he muttered. The man paused. "Sophie Hawthorne." The room went still. Jasper's head snapped up. "What did you say?" The man offered no explanation. "You will receive formal notices within the hour." He gathered his things and left. The doors closed behind him with a finality Jasper had never known. Margaret screamed through the phone. "What have you done?" Jasper couldn't answer. Across town, Sophie stood by the window of her hospital room, watching clouds drift lazily across the sky. Her phone buzzed, but she didn't check it. Daniel stood behind her, his expression unreadable. "You could stop this," he said quietly. Sophie shook her head. "He hasn't felt even a fraction of what he put us through." Daniel studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Then it continues." Back in the boardroom, Jasper's assistant approached hesitantly. "Sir, the media is downstairs." Jasper laughed weakly. "Of course they are." He caught his reflection in the glass wall, tie crooked, eyes wild. For the first time, the man who slapped a pregnant woman in front of a room full of people felt small. If you've ever been told your pain didn't matter, if you've ever watched someone powerful walk away after hurting you, subscribe and stay with this story. Because power answers to something bigger than ego. Jasper's phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "You should have protected her." Jasper stared at the message, hands shaking. Outside cameras flashed. Inside, everything he'd built began to collapse. Jasper's world shrank to noise and accusation. Reporters shouted questions as he pushed past them, their cameras flashing like gunfire. "Mr. Cole, is it true your company is under federal review? Did you abuse your pregnant wife? Who is Sophie Hawthorne?" Jasper didn't answer. He couldn't. The name echoed in his head, louder than everything else. Hawthorne. By nightfall, 3 contracts were officially terminated. Not suspended. Terminated. One email ended with a line that made his stomach drop. This decision was influenced by reputational exposure. Jasper slammed his laptop shut and rubbed his face. "This isn't real," he muttered. "This can't be real." His phone rang. "Margaret. What did you marry into?" she screamed the moment he answered. "People are calling me. My friends are asking questions. Who is Sophie Hawthorne?" Jasper snapped. "She never told me anything." "Then you should have kept your hands off her," Margaret hissed. "Do you have any idea what this is doing to our name?" "Our name?" Jasper barked. "You told me to throw her out." Silence crackled on the line. That night, Juliet packed her things. Jasper found her dragging a suitcase toward the door. "What are you doing?" She didn't look at him. "Protecting myself." "You said you loved me." She laughed bitterly. "I loved your life. There's a difference. You can't just leave." "I already am." She paused, finally turning to face him. "If this gets worse, don't call me." The door closed behind her. Jasper stood alone in the penthouse, the quiet suddenly deafening. Across the city, Sophie sat in a softly lit nursery Daniel had arranged overnight. The walls were painted pale blue, the crib already assembled. She traced her fingers along the railing, her heart heavy but calm. "People are calling you ruthless," Daniel said gently. Sophie smiled faintly. "They called me weak when I stayed." Daniel nodded. "They always do." Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "I didn't know who you were." Sophie stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it without replying. Back at Mitchell Construction, Jasper faced the board again, this time without allies. "We need to step down," one director said flatly. Immediately. Jasper laughed hollowly. You can't remove me. We already voted, another replied. Jasper's chair scraped loudly as he stood. This is my company. A woman near the end of the table met his eyes. It was. Until you made it a liability. Jasper's breath came fast. You're choosing her over me. We're choosing survival, she said. Jasper walked out without another word. Outside, the city felt different. Colder. Unforgiving. His phone vibrated again. Another message. You humiliated her. Now you'll learn what it costs. Jasper typed back with shaking hands. Who are you? No reply. At the hospital, Sophie rested a hand on her belly as a sharp pain twisted through her abdomen. She gasped, gripping the bed rail. The monitor beeped faster. A nurse rushed in. Sophie, are you in pain? Sophie nodded, fear flashing in her eyes. Daniel was at her side instantly. Call the doctor. The pain surged again, stronger this time. If you've ever paid the price for someone else's cruelty, if you've ever carried pain quietly while others walked free, subscribe and stay with this story, because the storm isn't just coming for him. It's testing how much she can endure. The nurse's voice sharpened. Her contractions are starting. Daniel's face hardened as he looked at Sophie. And across town, Jasper's phone buzzed one last time that night. A news alert. Mitchell Construction stock halted. Pending investigation. Jasper sank to his knees. At the same moment, Sophie cried out in pain. Two lives tipping in opposite directions. And neither of them could stop what was coming next. The hospital lights blurred as Sophie was rushed down the corridor, the wheels of the gurney rattling beneath her. Breathe with me, a nurse urged. Slow. Deep. Sophie tried. The pain came in waves, fierce and unrelenting, each one stealing her breath and replacing it with fear. Her hand searched blindly until it found Daniel's. He squeezed back solid, unshaking. I'm here, he said. You're not alone anymore. Across town, Jasper stood in the dark of his penthouse, watching the news crawl across the bottom of the screen. Analysts debated his downfall like it was a sporting event. His name, once spoken with admiration, now carried something close to disgust. He muted the TV and stared at his phone. No messages, no calls. The silence pressed in on him, heavy and accusing. At the hospital, Sophie cried out as another contraction tore through her. The doctor's voice was calm but urgent. She's progressing faster than expected. Daniel's jaw tightened. Do whatever you have to do. Hours passed in fragments of pain and pressure and whispered encouragement. Sophie's strength burned low, but she clung to one thought. She will never feel unwanted. Finally, a cry pierced the room. Fierce. Live. Sophie sobbed as they placed her daughter on her chest, warm and perfect. Hello, Sophie whispered. I've got you. Daniel exhaled for the first time in hours, his eyes wet. She's beautiful. She's safe, Sophie said. That's all that matters. Miles away, Jasper poured another drink he didn't need. His phone finally rang. A restricted number. He answered instantly. Hello. This is Hawthorne Legal, a woman said coolly. We're notifying you of an injunction freezing your personal assets pending investigation. Jasper's knees buckled. You can't do this. It's already done, she replied. Further contact should be directed through counsel. The line went dead. Jasper stared at the wall, breath ragged. The next morning, Sophie sat upright in her hospital bed, her daughter sleeping peacefully beside her. Daniel stood near the window, fielding calls he didn't answer. What happens now? Sophie asked quietly. Daniel turned. Now he learns. Jasper arrived at Mitchell Construction to find the doors locked. A security guard stepped forward. I'm sorry, sir. You're no longer authorized. Jasper laughed, the sound hollow. I own this building. Not anymore. Jasper's world tilted. At the hospital, Sophie brushed her thumb over her daughter's tiny hand. Her phone buzzed. Message from Jasper. Please. I didn't know. Let me see the baby. Sophie stared at the screen, her expression unreadable. He typed 3 words. Do not come. Jasper's reply came instantly. Sorry. Sophie turned her phone face down. Outside the hospital, Daniel received a final call and nodded once. Proceed with phase 2. Jasper spent the night in his car, the penthouse keys useless in his pocket. He stared up at the dark sky, whispering her name like a prayer he didn't deserve to answer. Somewhere across the city, Sophie held her daughter close. And the world that had once bowed to Jasper Cole quietly shut its doors forever. Jasper learned quickly how invisible a man becomes when the money is gone. The valet who used to greet him by name wouldn't meet his eyes. The doorman pretended not to recognize him. Even his phone felt lighter in his hand, stripped of numbers that once answered on the first ring. He tried one last time. Hawthorne Industries rose from the city like a monument. Glass, steel, untouchable. Jasper stood across the street, staring up at it. His suit wrinkled. His shoes scuffed for the first time in years. He told himself he wasn't afraid. That lie shattered the moment security stepped in front of him. You can't be here, the guard said calmly. I just want to talk to Sophie, Jasper pleaded. Tell her I'm sorry. The guard's expression didn't change. You need to leave. Jasper's voice cracked. I'm her husband. No, the guard said quietly. You were. Jasper stepped back, the words landing harder than any slap ever could. Inside the building, Sophie watched the scene unfold on a muted security monitor. She didn't flinch when Jasper's shoulders slumped or when he rubbed his face with shaking hands. Daniel stood beside her. You don't owe him anything. I know, Sophie said softly. That's why this hurts. She turned away before Jasper was escorted off the property. That afternoon the story broke nationwide. Former CEO locked out as investigation deepens. The video from the baby shower resurfaced everywhere. This time slowed, analyzed, condemned. Commentators called it what it was. Abuse, cowardice, entitlement. Jasper watched from a diner television. His reflection warped in the glass. Disgusting, a woman at the counter muttered. A man who hits a pregnant woman deserves everything he gets. Jasper stood and left before she could say more. Night fell. He slept on a friend's couch until that friend stopped answering the door. Then in his car. Then nowhere. Weeks passed. Sophie healed slowly, learning the rhythms of motherhood. Late nights, soft cries, moments of overwhelming love that made the past feel both distant and unbearably close. She has your eyes, Daniel said one evening, watching Sophie rock her daughter to sleep. Sophie smiled faintly. I hope she has your strength. She already has yours, he replied. Jasper meanwhile reached bottom and kept digging. He recorded a video apology with a borrowed phone, eyes hollow, voice trembling. He posted it everywhere. I made mistakes, he said. I wasn't myself. The comments were merciless. You were exactly yourself. Say her name. You're sorry you got caught. Jasper deleted the video within hours. One morning, Sophie received a letter. Handwritten, uneven. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I just want to know she's okay. Sophie folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer she never opened again. If you've ever watched someone ask for mercy only after destroying you. If you've ever been expected to heal the person who broke you. Subscribe and stay with this story. Because accountability doesn't ask for comfort. Jasper tried one final move. He showed up at a charity gala Hawthorne Industries sponsored, slipping past the press, blending into the crowd like a ghost of his former self. Sophie felt it before she saw him. The air shifted. Her chest tightened. He turned. Jasper stood a few feet away. Thinner, older, desperation etched into every line of his face. Sophie, he whispered. The room seemed to hold its breath. You can't be here, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I just need 1 minute, he begged. I've lost everything. Sophie met his eyes. You lost it the moment you raised your hand. Tears streaked down his face. I loved you. No, she said quietly. You loved what I gave you. Security approached, but Sophie lifted a hand, stopping them. Jasper's eyes filled with hope. She crushed it with one sentence. Don't ever come near my daughter. The guards escorted him away as whispers rippled through the crowd. Sophie stood frozen until Daniel appeared at her side. You did the right thing. She nodded, though her heart ached. Outside, rain began to fall. Jasper disappeared into it, swallowed by the city that no longer recognized him. Inside, Sophie took a deep breath and stepped back into the light, her daughter's future burning brighter than any past she'd left behind. But as the night wore on, a message arrived on Sophie's phone, one she hadn't expected. Board confirmation scheduled. Final transfer of control tomorrow. Sophie closed her eyes. Because the storm wasn't finished. It was about to make its final statement. Morning arrived without mercy. Jasper woke up on a park bench, his neck stiff, his mouth dry, the city humming around him like he didn't exist. A maintenance worker sprayed the sidewalk nearby, water splashing dangerously close to his shoes. Hey, the man barked. You can't sleep here. Jasper stood slowly, dizzy. Just 5 minutes. The worker didn't look at him again. Move along. Jasper obeyed. That was the worst part. How easily people told him what to do now, and how quickly he listened. Across the city, Sophie stood in front of a floor-to-ceiling window at Hawthorne Industries, her daughter asleep in a private nursery behind her. The boardroom buzzed with quiet anticipation. Men and women in tailored suits murmured, checked tablets, avoided eye contact. Daniel stood beside her. Once this starts, it won't stop. Sophie nodded. I know. She thought of the slap, laughter, the rain. Bring them in, she said. The doors opened. Jasper wasn't invited, but he watched anyway. A television in an electronics store played the live financial channel. Jasper stood among strangers as the anchor's voice filled the air. We're moments away from a major announcement involving Mitchell Construction and Hawthorne Industries. Jasper's chest tightened. Inside the boardroom, documents slid across polished wood. Votes were cast. Numbers finalized. No speeches. No drama. Just precision. The motion passes, the chairwoman said. Effective immediately. Sophie exhaled. Daniel turned to her. It's done. Jasper's phone buzzed at the exact same moment. A notification. Mitchell Construction acquired in full. Control transferred to Hawthorne Group. Jasper stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Someone beside him scoffed. Guess that guy finally got what he deserved. Jasper backed away, bumping into a display of televisions. His breath came in shallow bursts. No, he whispered. This is my company. Inside Hawthorne Industries, Sophie signed the final document. Her name, Sophie Hawthorne, sat neatly at the bottom. The room stood. Not for Daniel. For her. Applause filled the space, restrained but unmistakable. Sophie didn't smile. She thought of every night she'd cried silently so no one would accuse her of being dramatic. Every time she'd swallowed words to keep the peace. Every time she'd been told love meant endurance. She looked up. Mitchell Construction will continue operations, she said calmly. But under new values. The room stilled. We will not profit from cruelty, Sophie continued. We will not protect men who believe power excuses violence. A few people shifted uncomfortably. That era ends today. Outside, Jasper dropped his phone. It clattered against the concrete, the screen cracking like something final. He sank down against a building, his head in his hands. Across town, Sophie walked into the nursery and lifted her daughter gently. You won't ever beg for safety, she whispered. I promise. If you've ever been told to stay quiet so others could stay comfortable. If you've ever watched the person who hurt you keep winning, subscribe and stay with this story. Because sometimes justice doesn't shout. Signs papers. That evening, Jasper stood outside Hawthorne Industries again, but this time no anger remained. Only desperation. He approached the desk, voice barely audible. I need to see her. The receptionist looked up, eyes cold. Do you have an appointment? Jasper shook his head. Then you need to leave. As he turned away, his phone vibrated one last time. Private message. Tomorrow. 9 a.m. boardroom C. Jasper's heart pounded. For the first time in months, hope flickered. He didn't know if it was mercy or the final nail. Jasper sat in his car outside Hawthorne Industries, the cold leather steering wheel cutting into his palms. He had spent the night tossing and turning on park benches, in his friend's empty apartment, anywhere he could collapse. But today he told himself he would face her. Face the consequences. Face forgiveness, maybe. He rehearsed every apology, every plea. Please, Sophie. I didn't know. I was wrong. Sorry. The words repeated in his head like a mantra he hoped would work magic. Inside, the building hummed with the quiet efficiency of people who had always been in control. Sophie walked through the corridors, carrying Grace in one arm, her heels silent against the marble floors. Daniel followed at a respectful distance, eyes scanning every security camera, every hallway. Jasper entered the building. Security glanced at his ID and shook their heads. You can't be here, one said. I need to see her, Jasper said, voice trembling. It's important. The guard didn't flinch. No one enters without an appointment. You're trespassing. Jasper's hands curled into fists. She needs to hear me. I need to. Sir, the guard said calmly, the law is on our side. Jasper stumbled back, the weight of reality settling in. The man who had once commanded hundreds now obeyed a stranger's instructions like a child. In the boardroom, Sophie settled into her chair, Grace asleep in her arms. The meeting began immediately, but Sophie's attention was elsewhere. A knock at the door. Boardroom C, the receptionist called softly. Someone insists on seeing Ms. Hawthorne. He claims to be Jasper Cole. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He shouldn't be allowed. He's not ready. Sophie's lips pressed into a thin line. Let him in, she said quietly. Jasper walked in, disheveled, eyes red-rimmed, suit wrinkled. His voice cracked the second it left his lips. Sophie, please. I've lost everything. I know I hurt you. I need to explain. The boardroom fell silent. Directors and executives exchanged uncomfortable glances. Some had watched his downfall in real time. Some had profited from it. Everyone knew who he was and what he had done. Sophie didn't flinch. She studied him as she would any problem to solve. Steady. Unmoved. You have 1 minute, she said. Then you leave. No interruptions. No excuses. Jasper swallowed. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought love was enough, but love. Sophie's voice cut him off. You call hitting me and humiliating me love? The room tensed. Jasper's shoulders sagged. His hands trembled. He began, but Sophie lifted a hand. I gave you my trust, my body, my life, and you repaid me with betrayal, violence, and shame. Tears fell freely down his face. I'm sorry. I want to make it right. You don't get to decide what right is, Sophie said. You don't get that power anymore. Jasper's lips quivered. Please, for Grace. Let me see her. Sophie's eyes softened slightly as she looked at the small child sleeping in her arms. Grace stirred, sensing tension. Sophie breathed in deeply. You will not touch her, she said firmly. You will not come near her. Ever. Jasper's knees buckled. Sophie, please. No, she whispered. You lost that right the moment you struck me in front of 50 people and laughed. The moment you chose pride over love. The moment you decided cruelty was your inheritance. The boardroom was silent. Jasper could feel the weight of every judgment in the room, every eye, every whisper. He sank into the nearest chair, defeated. For the first time, The man who had once believed he was untouchable knew total powerlessness. Sophie stood, holding Grace, her face serene but impenetrable. Daniel stepped forward. Escort him out. Jasper didn't resist. He walked out, shoulders slumped, head bowed, swallowed by the city that had once feared his name. Outside, the rain started to fall, soft and relentless. Jasper paused, looking back at the building that symbolized everything he had lost. His phone buzzed. A text he didn't recognize. You were given chances. You failed them all. Jasper's fingers hovered over the screen, and he realized there was no one left to save him. Inside, Sophie returned to her office, Grace asleep in her arms, the weight of victory and justice settling in her chest. If you've ever been humiliated, overlooked, or told your pain doesn't matter, subscribe and stay with this story. Because sometimes the people who hurt us most only understand consequences when they're finally powerless, and the storm has already passed over them. Jasper vanished into the night, and Sophie whispered to her daughter, "You will never need anyone to protect you like I did, because you'll be stronger than they ever imagined." But outside the walls, someone was still watching. And not everyone who had orchestrated his downfall was finished. The next move was coming, and it would leave Jasper wondering if even regret could save him. 5 years later, the skyline of New York glittered like a battlefield one. Sophie stood on the balcony of Harrington Media Group's headquarters, her hand resting lightly on the railing. Grace, now 5, tugged at her skirt, pointing toward a fountain below. The city moved below them, oblivious to the journey that had brought them here. Inside, the boardroom hummed with life. Investors, executives, and young leaders followed Sophie's every word. Every decision she made carried the weight of someone who had survived humiliation, betrayal, and violence, and turned it into unshakable power. Revenue growth exceeded projections, her CFO reported. International partnerships are secured. Sophie nodded, but her mind wandered briefly to the past. To the baby shower. To the rain. To the man who thought cruelty could break her. She smiled faintly. Not for him. Not for anyone. For herself, and for Grace, who had grown into a fearless little girl already showing hints of her mother's resolve. Across the city, Jasper Mitchell scribbled on a thin notepad inside a homeless shelter. His suit long gone, his hair streaked with gray. He stared at a photograph of Sophie and Grace on a news article. Harrington Media Group CEO, Sophie Harper. He read the words over and over. Regret had replaced arrogance, shame replaced pride, but the damage was irreversible. A letter sat beside him, unfolded, trembling slightly as if it carried its own weight. I have spent 5 years learning what it means to have nothing. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I am truly sorry. Jasper folded it again, feeling every loss he had earned. Back at Harrington, Sophie walked down the hall toward the nursery. Grace ran to her, arms outstretched, laughing. "Mommy," she shouted. "You've got my eyes," Sophie said, scooping her up. "And my stubbornness." Grace giggled. "Like you'll make the bad guys go away." Sophie hugged her tighter. "Exactly." Daniel stood behind her, smiling faintly. "She's already learning from the best." Sophie let out a slow breath, memories of the past swirling like storm clouds she had finally weathered. The final email arrived on her phone, marked urgent. "All assets of Mitchell Construction have been transferred to Hawthorne Holdings. No exceptions." She glanced at it briefly. Then she deleted it. Jasper's empire, his family's fortune, his fleeting fame, all gone. All consequences of his own cruelty. If you've ever been humiliated in front of others, if you've ever been told to stay silent while someone hurt you, remember this: power is not always loud. It doesn't always strike. Sometimes it waits, patient, silent, strategic. Sophie carried Grace to the window, letting the city lights reflect in her eyes. "Some storms come to destroy us," she whispered, "but the strongest souls learn to dance in the rain, and then teach their daughters to do the same." She turned to Daniel. "We've won. For good." He nodded. "And he's lost everything he ever took for granted." Outside, in a shadowed corner, Jasper stared up at the towering building that had once been his rival and now her domain. Rain began to fall, soft and relentless. He reached out as if to grasp it, but the wind stole the warmth from his fingers. 5 years had passed. He had nothing. Sophie, meanwhile, held her daughter close, the echo of the past behind them. And though the world had tried to break her, she had built an empire, not just of wealth, but of dignity, resilience, and unshakable justice. And in the quiet aftermath, the strongest rise. Jasper's phone buzzed one last time with a message from an unknown number. Learn from her, or watch everything else disappear. He stared at it, trembling, knowing that some lessons arrived too late. Sophie turned back to the skyline, Grace in her arms, the city alive below them. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself a quiet, victorious smile. The storm had passed. The world knew her power. And no one would ever underestimate her again. This story isn't just about revenge or power. It's about resilience, self-worth, and the courage to rise above humiliation. Sophie's journey shows us that strength isn't always loud, and the quietest voices often carry the heaviest weight of justice. Remember, no one has the right to define your value or your destiny. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt underestimated, betrayed, or silenced, hit subscribe and join a community that celebrates strength, resilience, and the triumph of the human spirit. Don't miss the next story that proves power comes to those who endure, fight quietly, and rise unstoppable.